Depression and suicide run in my family. It's called generational depression and suicide. My grandmother died by suicide. My mother found her. My great aunt died by suicide. My mother and I found her. I was 4 years old. And I came close enough to dying by suicide that, I could tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like. And I realized that I could speak on suicide prevention.
What dream would you pursue if you knew for a fact that you had absolutely nothing to lose?
And so I did my first TEDx at 52.
And I came very close in 2010 to taking my own life. Well, I've been depressed off and on all my life, and I've been depressed at some of the best times in my life. And I always worried, what's going to happen if I'm depressed at the worst time in my life? And I found out. I had an itch on the roof of my mouth. I could only scratch with the front sight on my nickel-plated .38. Yeah, spoiler alert, didn't pull the trigger. Yeah, I've got a friend of mine here named Glenn Friesman who came to see me as another speaker. When I said that, he heard me say that, he goes, how come you didn't pull the trigger? I said, Glenn, could you try to sound a little less disappointed? Is that...
Because nobody that knew me knew I was depressed and having thoughts of suicide. My wife didn't know. My family didn't know. Matter of fact, when it posted on YouTube, my wife's about to hit play, and I said, look, before you hit play, I need to tell you about a half a dozen things you don't know about.
Please welcome to the stage, Mr. Frank King.
And what I discovered in the preparation for the TED Talk was that nobody talks about depression and suicide. I mean, in the United States last year, 47,000 people died by suicide. That's 1 every 11 minutes, and hardly anybody's talking about it.
I myself do not believe I am broken. I have 2 mental illnesses. One is called major depressive disorder, better known as depression, and something called chronic suicidality, which is little known, which means for me and people in my tribe, the option of suicide is always on the menu for problems large and small. A couple of years ago, my car broke down. I had 3 thoughts unbidden. 1, I'd get it fixed. 2, I could buy a new one. 3, or I could just kill myself. It just bubbles up as an option all the time.
Almost every time I speak and I talk about chronic suicidality, after the presentation, one person, sometimes more than one, comes up and they have chronic suicidality and they did not know it had a name. They felt, because of the way they think, they're just freaks, and they felt very alone. And I had a young woman come up to me at a college event, and she said, I enjoyed your keynote, but I got to tell you, it made me weep. And I said, how did it make you weep? She goes, when you mentioned chronic suicidality and the story about your car, she goes, I've been having those same thoughts my entire life. I didn't know it had a name. I thought I was some kind of freak. And when I heard that you thought the same way, she goes, I realized for the first time in my life that I'm not alone, and I wept.
That's why I do what I do.
Because people ask me all the time, why did Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade want to die? They had everything. Chances are they didn't want to die. Chances are they, like me, they just wanted to end the pain. So that's the ROI. The reward for me is people who come up afterwards. And maybe I've steered them just far enough off the path to suicide that they're going to live a normal life. I realized at some point that I'm like George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, in that I'm shown over and over what people's lives would be like if I hadn't have been there to speak.
I believe, like the young woman that I spoke to at the college, that I was the only one who thought that way. Until I'm talking to a comedian friend of mine. We're talking about how we got started. She goes, do you want to hear the real story? I said, sure. She goes, it's dark, it's Disturbed. I go, honey, my middle name is Disturbed. She goes, okay, I'm working in Washington, D.C., great job, good benefits. Hated every minute of it. The only joy I have all week long, by the way, she's depressed and having thoughts of suicide. The only joy that I had all day long, or all week long, was the 2 nights I went to the comedy club and did open mic night. Because that's where I thought I should be. That's what I thought I should be doing. And one day she said, I realized, see this coming? If I keep my job and don't pursue stand-up comedy, sooner or later, I'm going to kill myself. And I said, let me guess the rest. She goes, okay. And then you realize at that moment, you had nothing to lose. And you thought, I could quit my job, pursue stand-up comedy. If I succeed, great. If I fail, I can still kill myself. She goes, how do you know that? Know that, honey. I lived it. I knew at that moment that I was not alone. And since then, I've met a goodly number of entrepreneurs and entertainers who had the very same thought process. Because a normal person who is at that juncture in their life, married, say, in miserable job and miserable, they got a dream, they're not pursuing it. They think, well, I could get divorced, I could quit my job, I could pursue my dream. Here's where it breaks down for them. Oh man, but what if I failed? I would lose everything. They have to make a choice. They have to make a decision. And most people, probably wisely, select the devil they know versus the devil they don't. Recently, they've done 2 or 3 studies on entrepreneurs and mental health. And they've discovered in each study, a solid third of entrepreneurs are depressed and having thoughts of suicide. Now, the clinicians believe it's because of long hours, little sleep, and unmet expectations. That may be the case, but I will bet you there's a mathematically significant slice of that population. They are, in fact, entrepreneurs pursuing a dream because they were depressed and suicidal and came to the same juncture that my comedian friend and I came to. First question, I can't believe they wanted to die. First misconception. I believe most people who die by suicide do not want to die. I didn't want to die when I came that close. I simply wanted to end the pain. Do you guys know there's a Greek character in mythology, Sisyphus? Do you know Sisyphus? Yeah, he did something wrong. He pissed off the gods. I can't remember. He gave humans fire or slept with Zeus's daughter or something. And I really don't think that's it. But his punishment, do you know this? Was to roll the rock up a hill every day. And right before it got to the top, it would roll back down. So every day he had to roll up the hill. Having a mental illness is like that. Every morning you wake up, there's a rock and a hill. And you've got to move the rock up the hill. Some days the rock is small and the hill's not so steep. Some days that rock is a boulder and the hill is Mount Everest. But there's always a rock, there's always a hill, and you've got to move it. The good news is 8 out of 10 people who are contemplating suicide, you can do something about that. You can make a difference. You can save a life, and you can do it by doing something as simple as what we're doing right here, and that's starting a conversation.
Hey, Frank. I didn't tell you that you were the reason I decided to stick around. There you were, putting a face to what I was feeling.
If you are not in crisis, but you are living with a mental illness, and you're struggling, see me at the break. Because as a member of my tribe, I will do my best to help you get the resources you need so that when you wake up in the morning, you can move that rock. Thanks very much.